The torches guttered as if the castle itself drew breath through cracked stone, and in their wavering light the rivers on the map looked like veins cut into parchment. Robb Stark held the letter as though it might bite him. It bore the lion seal and the smell of travel, wet wax, horse sweat, old smoke. Not Tywin Lannister's hand, but his reach all the same. Words could be spears when they carried orders, and Tywin's orders had set the Riverlands burning from God's eye to the Red Fork. "He thinks we will come to him," Robb said, and heard how young his own voice sounded beneath the weight of men who had been riding and killing since before he had first put on a sword belt. He laid the letter on the table. "He expects us to dash ourselves against his shield wall until we are too weary to lift a blade." Great Jon Umber's laugh boomed. "Then we'll show the old lion what a wolf does when the trap's sprung." "No," said Catelyn Stark, soft and sharp at once, like a needle passing through cloth. "We cannot keep trading dead for dead. Not if you mean to bring your sisters home, Robb." Her words made the room smaller. "Sansa Stark in the Red Keep. Arya Stark. Where? In the dark spaces between ravens and prayers." Robb could feel them in the silence that followed, as if the names were ghosts standing behind his shoulders. Blackfish's finger tapped the map where the green fork met the trident. "Tywin Lannister is heavy," Brynden Tully said. "Heavy and proud. He has wagons, siege trains, knights with their plated horses, and camp followers enough to make a moving town. He cannot vanish the way you did in the Whispering Wood." Roose Bolton's pale eyes regarded the inked lines without blinking. "A heavy beast still crushes a man if it steps on him," he murmured. Robb met that look and held it. "Then we do not stand beneath it. We draw it where it must step wrong." "Step wrong?" Ricard Karstark's voice rasped like a whetstone. "The only wrong Tywin Lannister knows is losing. He will pay blood for it, and he has more blood than us." Robb's hand slid over the map until his fingers rested on the crown-shaped smear of ink that marked King's Landing. He felt every eye shift to that point, as if the room itself leaned. Great Jon Umber's grin faltered. "You're not. I am," Robb said. He heard the steadiness in himself and was grateful for it. "Tywin Lannister is in the Riverlands with most of his strength. He burns fields and hangs men because he believes the war is here. The war is not here. Not if we make it elsewhere." Catelyn's face tightened. "King's Landing is far, and you would march past Harrenhal, past every road where lions can bite at your heels." "Let them bite," said Robb. "While their jaws are on our cloak, they cannot close around our throat." Blackfish's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "A wolf in a city," he said, as though tasting the phrase. "It would be something. It would be the end," Robb said. "Joffrey Baratheon sits a throne he do. Yes, not deserve. Cersei Lannister rules through him. If I take the city, I take my sister. I take their court. I take their lie and hold it up for the realm to see. And Tywin Lannister will find his family in my grasp." Roose Bolton's voice was a whisper. "And if the city does not fall, then I die," Robb said simply. The truth tasted like iron. "Or we retreat with less than we came for, and Tywin Lannister laughs while he hunts us down." Great Jon Umber slapped the table hard enough to make the torches shudder. "I did not ride south to count risks like a craven. If the young wolf says we take their den, then we take their den." Karstark's scowl remained, but the anger in it shifted, as if it found a new shape. "If we take the city," he said, "then we take vengeance." Robb did not answer that. He thought of Ned Stark's head on a spike. Vengeance was a fire that warmed you only until it consumed the house around you. He turned to Blackfish. "I want Tywin Lannister pinned. I want him looking north while we go south." Blackfish nodded once. "Rivers do the pinning for men clever enough to use them." Robb looked to Roose Bolton. "You will hold the crossings with Edmure Tully. You will harry Tywin's foragers, cut his wagons, make him hungry. You will not give him a grand battle unless it is one you choose and can win." Roose Bolton's lips parted in something that might have been obedience. "As you command, my king." Robb hated the word and needed it both. He turned again, and gray wind rose, placing his great head beneath Robb's hand. The direwolf's fur was thick and warm and smelled of wet leaves and old blood. Robb scratched behind the wolf's ear and felt the animal's calm, its certainty. It did not care for maps or crowns. It knew only pack and prey. "Send ravens," Robb said, "to every man who can ride light and fast. We travel with what we can carry. No tents we cannot burn. No wagons we cannot abandon. We go for kings landing like a knife thrown in the dark." Outside, the river ran on, indifferent, as if it had seen 1,000 kings rise and sink beneath its surface. Inside, Robb Stark chose to become something the realm had not yet named. The twins rose from the river like a challenge, two stone jaws facing one another across dark water, joined by a bridge that belonged to one old man's pride. The wind off the green fork carried the smell of fish and rot, and the sound of it gnawing at the pilings seemed like teeth. Walder Frey made no move to rise as Robb entered. He sat wrapped in furs, his thin neck craned forward, his pale eyes sharp as pinheads. "So," croaked Walder Frey, "the boy king comes again, and this time he wants more than a crossing." Robb bowed his head only as much as courtesy demanded and no more. "I want what you promised before," he said. "Passage. Men, bread, and I want it quickly." Walder Frey's mouth worked. "Quickly?" he repeated as if savoring the taste. "A young man always wants quickly, but the river does not move quickly, and neither do old men. What do I get for it? Promise? Promises are thin. You cannot stew them." Caitlyn's voice cut in, taut as a string. "My lord, you gave your word to my son. You pledged your banners to his cause." "My cause?" Walder Frey wheezed a laugh that turned into a cough. "Your son's cause changes with every raven. One day he fights in the Riverlands, the next he speaks of marching south. I have lived long enough to know that a man who runs in two directions tears himself in half." Robb's gaze did not flinch. "Then take your payment in advance," he said, and reached into the pouch at his belt. Caitlyn's hand touched his wrist, warning, but Robb lifted it away gently. From the pouch he drew a ring, gold, set with a dark stone, and laid it on the table before Walder Frey. It was not a Lannister ring. It bore no lion. It bore a trout, the sigil of House Tully, taken from a lesser knight who had fled rather than die. Robb did not care for the ring. He cared for what it represented: wealth and the willingness to take it. Walder Frey's eyes darted to it and back. "Pretty," he said, "but pretty is not enough." Robb nodded. "Then take hostages," he said, and felt the air in the hall change, as if every man inhaled at once. "Take my men's sons, if you like. Take my lord's nephews. Take those you think matter, and I will take yours in return. Let us bind the bridge with blood, not ink." Blackfish's laugh was short and humorless. "The boy is learning," he said. Walder Frey's gaze slid to gray wind. The direwolf stood silent, but his eyes were not. They watched, bright and patient, as though they saw the meat beneath Walder Frey's skin. "I do not like wolves," Walder Frey muttered. "Then do not give me reason to unleash one," Robb said, and heard the coldness in himself. He did not enjoy it. That was the only comfort he had. Walder Frey leaned back, fingers drumming on his cup. "Hostages, then," he said. "And another thing. Your word before was for a marriage. A Frey girl in your bed. I am not a man to be made a fool of, even by kings." Caitlyn's lips thinned. Robb felt the old weight of that promise settle again like chainmail, heavy and unpleasant. He had been willing to promise anything to cross the river when the war was young. Now the promise had teeth. "I will marry a daughter of House Frey," Robb said. He did not add at once, because to add conditions was to invite bargaining, but the conditions were already inside him. He would not live as Walder Frey's captive. He would not let the bridge be a collar. "And which daughter?" Walder Frey asked, sly. "I have enough to choose from. Some are pretty. Some are less so. Some are." "Not here," Robb said. "Not now. When the war is ended, when my sisters are safe, I will come and take a bride. You will have your honor, my lord. Walder Frey's expression creased. When the war is ended, he repeated, bitter. A fine time to collect payment, after the coin has been spent. Robb stepped closer. The Fryguard stiffened, but Grey Wind's low growl made them hesitate. Robb laid his hand flat on the table, near the ring, near Walder Frey's bony fingers. You will have hostages now, Robb said. You will have my word now, and you will have something else now. What? Walder Frey asked, suspicious. Robb's eyes flicked to the hall's high windows, where the river light fell in pale bars. If I take King's Landing, Robb said, I will remember who opened the bridge for me. I will remember who did not. Men will come to you asking where you stood when a crown fell. I can make the answer profitable. For a moment Walder Frey looked like an old fox hearing the distant baying of hounds and considering which hole would save him. Then his mouth curled into a thin smile. Men, Walder Frey said loudly, and clapped his hands once. Give the king his bread. Give him his passage. And for the love of gods, someone take that damned wolf outside before it pisses on my floor. Grey Wind did not move until Robb did. Together they crossed the bridge that night beneath a sky of hard stars. The river below whispered, black and cold, and Robb could not shake the sense that he was walking over something alive. On the far side, the road ran south into the Crownlands. Behind him, Walder Frey's towers watched like eyes that never slept. The Crownlands were not the Riverlands. They did not bleed openly. They hid their wounds behind hedgerows and stone walls and small, stubborn villages that watched strangers from behind shutters. The fields here were thinner, the soil stingier, as if it had learned from King's Landing that hunger was a kind of rule. Robb rode with his cloak drawn tight, keeping the line moving even when men's legs ached and horses steamed in the cold. He did not allow fires at night unless they could be shielded. He did not allow songs. The war had songs enough. He wanted silence. Theon Greyjoy rode near him, his face sharp with impatience. You're pushing them too hard, Theon said, glancing back at the men. Even wolves need to sleep. Wolves sleep with one eye open, Robb replied. Theon snorted. And drowners sleep with both eyes closed. They wake anyway or they don't. Robb did not look at him. Theon was a blade he kept sheathed and pointed away from his own ribs, and he was not sure he could keep it there much longer. Balon Greyjoy sat on the Iron Islands like a crow on a corpse, waiting for the moment the realm looked away. If Robb sent Theon, the crow would know the north was busy. If he kept him, the crow might still peck, but perhaps less boldly. A rider had been brought in at dawn, caught trying to skirt their scouts. He wore no lion colors, but his horse was good and his boots were too fine for a farmer. Under his cloak, a sealed strip of parchment, narrow as a knife. Robb knelt before the man now in the cold dirt, his own knees wet with frost. The prisoner's jaw clenched hard enough to make the tendons stand out like ropes. Who sent you? Robb asked. The man's eyes were defiant. A lord, he spat. A lord you cannot touch. Robb broke the seal. The wax bore the impression of a keep he had never seen except in songs and in the bitter stories of men who had been south. The Red Keep. His fingers tightened. It was a short message, written in a careful hand that tried to hide urgency behind neat lines. They say you are coming. The city is hungry. The gold cloaks can be bought. The river gate is watched less than the others. The queen fears poison more than swords. Joffrey is cruel. He makes enemies like breathing. It was unsigned, but Robb did not need a name. He could see his sister's face as he read, pale beneath the shadow of a crown not hers. Caitlin would have called it hope. Robb called it a hook. Blackfish leaned over his shoulder. A bird from inside, Brynden murmured. Or bait. Robb folded the parchment carefully, as if he could smooth away the dangers in its creases. We will treat it as both, he said. He rose and looked at the prisoner. You were riding toward King's Landing, Robb said. You were carrying something that matters. You can tell me what you know, or you can die here and whatever you know will die with you. The man's lips peeled back. "You think you can take the city?" he hissed. "You're a boy with snow on his boots." Robb drew his sword, the steel whispering as it cleared the scabbard. He did not raise it. He simply held it where the man could see his reflection warped in the blade. "I am a boy," Robb said, "and I have taken your lord's son. I have broken your lord's armies. I have made Tywin Lannister chase shadows while his lands burn. If you think a city is harder than an army, you have never seen what fear does when it has nowhere to run." The prisoner swallowed. The defiance cracked at the edges. The man talked then in ragged pieces. He spoke of storehouses emptied to feed soldiers, of bread lines that turned into riots, of gold cloaks whose loyalty bent like reeds in a storm. He spoke of Tyrion Lannister as hand, clever and hated, and of Cersei Lannister as a queen who clutched power so tightly it bled. He spoke of wildfire buried beneath the city like green bones. Robb listened and felt his plan sharpen. He did not need every gate. He needed one. He did not need every street. He needed the heart. When the man finished, Robb stood and sheathed his sword. "What now?" Theon asked, watching him. Robb looked south. The road dipped and rose, and in the far distance the faint smear of smoke on the horizon could have been any hearth, any campfire. But Robb knew where the greatest smoke in the realm would be. The city that ate the world and belched out gold and lies. "Now," Robb said, "we move before they can turn their fear into steel." That night, in a small wood where the branches clawed at the moonlight, Robb sat with Grey Wind's head in his lap and read his sister's words again by the cover of his cloak. He imagined her writing them in some silent corner, surrounded by enemies, her hands steady only because she had learned what trembling cost. He swore then, not aloud, because oaths spoken in the dark felt like prayers and he did not know if the gods listened. He swore he would not leave her there. Sansa Stark learned the sound of the city the way other girls learned songs. It was never quiet. Even at night there was a murmuring, as if 1,000 throats whispered secrets to the stones. Sometimes the whispers became shouts. Sometimes the shouts became screams. She stood in the gallery with her fingers knotted together until her knuckles ached. Below, the rooftops sprawled, slate and straw and tar, packed so tight it looked like a field of broken teeth. Beyond them, the river cut a dark curve, and the walls rose like a promise meant to keep out everything the city deserved. They say a wolf is coming, she thought, and the thought was dangerous because it was sweet. Sweetness could kill you in King's Landing. It made you careless. Behind her, the queen's women tittered softly, their laughter thin. They watched her the way cats watched a mouse they were not yet bored of. Cersei Lannister's voice carried from the window, sharp as a slap. "You think I do not see what you are doing? You have no right." "I have every right," Tyrion Lannister replied, and his voice was calm in a way that made it more insulting. "I am Hand of the King. Or had you forgotten?" Cersei's laugh was bitter. "You are Hand because father put you there, not because you are anything but a monkey in a silk jacket. And you are queen because you opened your legs to a king," Tyrion said lightly. "We are all elevated by accidents of birth and bed, dear sister." Sansa's stomach tightened. She had learned not to react. The queen's anger was a storm that looked for trees to break. Joffrey Baratheon leaned on the balcony rail, his mouth curved in a pleased little smile as he watched smoke rise from somewhere in the city. "Let them riot," he said. "It will teach them respect." "It will teach them to hate you," Tyrion said. Joffrey turned, his eyes bright with the pleasure of cruelty. "They already hate me, and they cannot do anything about it." That was not true, Sansa thought. She had seen what hungry men did when they stopped believing in fear. She had seen them throwing stones at gold cloaks, at the king's own procession, at her. She still felt the bruises sometimes when she moved the wrong way. Varys stood near the wall, hands folded over his belly, his smile gentle and unreadable. His eyes flicked towards Sansa, and for a heartbeat she wondered if he knew. If he could smell the parchment she had hidden, the words she had sent out like a bird with broken wings. She had not sent much, only enough, only what a careful girl could write without being found and flayed. "The city is hungry," The gold cloaks can be bought. The river gate is watched less. She had written it with a steady hand while her heart raced like a trapped thing. She had bribed a servant with a ring she had once thought precious. She had watched the servant's fingers close around the paper as if it were nothing, and had prayed to gods she did not trust. Now she watched the queen and the imp and the boy king, and she wondered if her paper had become ash somewhere on the road, or if it was in Robb Stark's hand, guiding him like a lantern. Tyrion's gaze slid past Cersei to Sansa. His eyes narrowed slightly, as if he saw something in her face she did not mean to show. "You," he said abruptly. "Come here." Sansa's breath caught. She stepped forward because she had learned what hesitation invited. She moved like a lady, as she was supposed to, even though she felt like a rabbit being called by a wolf. Tyrion regarded her for a long moment. He did not smile. "You hear things," he said quietly, so the queen's women could not catch every word. "Girls always do. Have you heard anything about wolves?" Cersei's head snapped toward them. "What are you whispering about?" Tyrion did not look away from Sansa. "I asked Lady Sansa if she has heard any songs lately," he said with perfect innocence. "Perhaps she can sing for us to lighten the mood." Joffrey rolled his eyes. "I hate her singing. It's boring." Sansa's mouth was dry. She chose her words with care. "I have heard the small folk talk," she said softly. "They are afraid." "Afraid of what?" Tyrion asked. Sansa glanced out over the city. "Afraid of hunger," she said. "Afraid of each other. Afraid of soldiers. Afraid of change." Tyrion's eyes searched her. Something like understanding flickered there, then vanished behind a practiced mask. He turned away, as if he had decided she was not worth the trouble. Cersei's mouth curled. "She is afraid of her brother," she said. "As she should be. He is a traitor, and traitors die." Sansa forced herself not to flinch. Her brother was coming. If he came. That night, she lay in her bed beneath silk sheets that felt like cobwebs and listened to the distant roar of the city. Somewhere a man screamed. Somewhere a woman laughed too loudly. Somewhere the bells of the Great September rang in a rhythm that sounded like warning. Sansa closed her eyes and tried to picture Winterfell. The smell of pine. The sound of wolves in the night. Her father's face. Robb's grin when he thought no one was watching. Arya's fierce scowl. She held those images like stones in her pocket, heavy enough to keep her from floating away. And far beyond the walls, on roads that ran through cold fields and silent woods, the wolves were moving. King's Landing smelled before it was seen. Even from the fields beyond the walls, the air carried a sour tang, tanneries and smoke, dung and salt fish. It was a city that sweated, that oozed, that lived too tightly packed. Robb had imagined it as a shining thing because songs always did. The truth was stone and mud and desperation. They came to it at night, not as a proud army marching beneath banners, but as men slipping toward a throat with a knife in hand. Robb had left the bulk of his force in the treeline and the folds of the land, hidden as best as an army could be hidden so near a city. He brought only those he trusted to be silent. Blackfish moved like a man half his age, his grin thin in the darkness. Meage Mormont's face was a hard shape beneath her hood, eyes bright with the kind of joy that came from danger. "River Gate," Blackfish murmured, pointing. The Mud Gate, they called it, because the river lapped at its base and turned the ground into mire. It was not the grandest entrance. It was watched but not loved. Men always guarded what they feared most, and the grand gates were the ones kings worried about. This was a working gate, for fish and barges and carts. Working men were easier to buy. They waited in the reeds near the water until the signal came. A torch lifted twice, then lowered. The gold cloaks at the postern door were silhouettes. Robb could not see their faces, but he could see their hands. One of them taking a purse, weighing it, then nodding. The door scraped open a finger's width. Gray Wind's muscles bunched, and Robb felt the direwolf's hunger like heat. Robb laid a hand on the wolf's neck, steadying him. "Not yet," he breathed. Blackfish slipped forward first, a shadow among shadows. Robb followed, heart hammering against his ribs so loud, he was sure the gold cloaks would hear it. Inside the postern passage, the air was damp and close. The stones were slick beneath their boots. The gold cloak who had taken the purse looked at Robb, and for a heartbeat Robb saw fear flash. The man's lips parted as if to speak, perhaps to call out, perhaps to curse himself for what he had done. Robb's sword was at his throat before the sound could form. "Quiet," Robb whispered. The man's eyes darted to Grey Wind, who padded into the passage behind Robb, silent as night. The gold cloak's knees trembled. You're the... Robb pressed the blade just enough to draw a bead of blood. "Quiet," he said again, and the word was not a request. They moved through the narrow streets beyond the gate in tight knots, avoiding torchlit corners. King's Landing at night was still alive. Drunken men staggering from alehouses, whores leaning in doorways, a cart rattling over stones. None of them looked at Robb long enough to see the wolf in him. They saw only cloaks and shadows and assumed the city's usual dangers. Then someone screamed. The sound cut through the night like a bell, and the city answered. Shouts rose. Feet pounded. Torches flared to life along a nearby street. "They've seen something," Midge Mormont growled. "Move," Robb said, and they moved. The plan had been to slide deeper, to take a second gate from within, to open the way for the main force. But plans were made of paper, and King's Landing was fire. A gold cloak patrol rounded a corner. 5 men with spears, their torches bobbing. They saw Grey Wind first, and their eyes widened. "What?" Grey Wind sprang. He hit the first man like a storm. The gold cloak's scream was cut short as teeth closed around his throat. The others shouted, raising spears, but Robb and his men were on them. Steel flashed. A spear clattered. Blood darkened the stones. Robb killed a man and felt nothing but the cold clarity of necessity. The man's eyes stared at him as he fell, shocked as if he had expected the city's walls to protect him from war. Another shout came from farther away. Bells began to ring. Not the great bells of the Sept, but the smaller alarms of posts calling to one another. "They'll close the gates," Blackfish snarled. "Then we take them before they can," Robb said. They ran. The streets twisted like intestines, narrow and foul. Robb's boots slipped on filth. Somewhere a door slammed. Somewhere glass shattered. A woman screamed again, and this time the scream turned into laughter, as if she had realized it was safer to pretend she had meant it. They reached a broader street where the smell of fish grew stronger. Ahead, the mud gate's main arch loomed, its heavy doors barred from within. Gold cloaks clustered near it. More now, a dozen at least, faces half-lit by torches. Robb's mind raced. He could not batter that door from this side with the men he had. He could not wait for ladders. He could not afford to lose the city in the first heartbeat. Then he saw it. A narrow stairway leading up to the wall walk, guarded by 2 men. "We go up," Robb said. Blackfish blinked. "Up," Robb nodded. "We open it from above." Midge Mormont smiled like a woman who had found a new way to break bones. They hit the stair guards hard and fast. One died with a knife in his ribs. The other tried to run, but Grey Wind caught him, dragged him down, and the sound of snapping was muffled by the city's rising noise. Robb climbed the steps 2 at a time. The wall walk was cold and wind-scoured. From here he could see torches blooming across the city like angry fireflies. The red keep rose in the distance, black against the stars. Below, the gatehouse mechanisms were visible, chains, winches, the thick bar that sealed the doors. Men were shouting orders. Someone was calling for the hand. Robb vaulted onto the parapet and raised his voice. "Open!" he roared, not like a boy, not like a lord, but like a wolf announcing himself. "Open the gate, or I'll paint these stones with your blood." For a heartbeat, the men below froze, looking up in disbelief. Then Grey Wind appeared on the wall walk behind Robb, his silhouette huge, his eyes catching torchlight and turning it to gold. He bared his teeth, and the sound that rose from his chest was not a growl. It was a promise. A gold cloak below dropped his spear and ran. The others hesitated. Robb did not give them time. He leapt down the inner stair toward the gatehouse, his men following, and the fight became close and ugly.
Swordsrang.
Torches fell, scattering sparks. A man lunged at Robb with a spear. Robb slapped it aside and drove his blade into the man's chest. The bar across the gate was thick oak banded with iron. Took 3 men straining to lift it. Robb threw himself into it with them, muscles screaming. Outside the walls, he heard it. The low thunder of hooves as his hidden force began to move at last, drawn by the city's alarm. "Lift!" Robb shouted. The bar rose, inch by inch, and then the doors began to swing outward with a groan like a beast waking. Cold night air rushed in. Torches flared, and through the widening gap poured the north. Mud-stained men with wolves on their banners, eyes hard, blades ready, the sound of their voices rising into the city's throat. Robb Stark stepped back as his army surged past him, and for the first time he allowed himself to look toward the Red Keep and think, this is real. The city was awake now, and it would not go back to sleep. The city resisted the way a wounded animal resisted, thrashing without direction, biting anything close enough. The first streets fell quickly, the gold cloaks breaking in some places like rotten wood, fighting in others with the stubbornness of men who knew what the Queen did to failure. Robb pushed forward not toward the widest roads, but toward the nerves, the watch posts, the gatehouses, the places where orders became action. He had no interest in owning every alley. He wanted the spine. A cart burned in the street, its wheels collapsing with soft pops. Smoke crawled low, stinging eyes. Small folk fled in screaming clusters, knocking into soldiers, spilling baskets, trampling fallen men. Robb saw a child clinging to a woman's skirt, eyes huge. He wanted to tell them to get clear, to go inside, to hide, but his mouth was full of war. A gold cloak swung a mace at him. Robb ducked and drove his sword up under the man's arm where the mail gaped. The man's breath whooshed out. He fell and Robb stepped over him. "Hold your line," Robb shouted, and his voice was swallowed by the roar of the city. Gray wind moved ahead of him, a blur of fur and teeth, but he did not chase into crowds. Robb had trained him for this. A dire wolf could become a nightmare if loosed without restraint, and Robb needed the nightmare aimed. A horn sounded from deeper in the city. Sharp, urgent. Another answered. The gold cloaks were pulling back toward the higher ground, toward the Red Keep, toward the heart. And then, like a spider's thread tugged in the dark, the green light appeared. It flared from a side street, sudden and unnatural, painting faces sickly. Men shouted, stumbling back. The smell hit a heartbeat later. Sharp, chemical, wrong, like burned herbs and something older. Wildfire, Blackfish snarled. A jar exploded against a barricade, and the flames that leapt were not red or orange. They were emerald, licking wood and flesh alike, climbing as if hungry for the sky. Robb's men recoiled. Even hardened Northmen feared fire that did not behave like fire. "Back!" Meage Mormont bellowed. "Back from it!" Robb's eyes scanned the street. The wildfire was blocking a route he had intended to use, forcing him into a narrower lane where the buildings leaned close, their upper stories nearly touching. It was a trap, whether meant as one or not. "Not that way," Robb snapped. "We go around. Keep moving. Do not stop." A shout rose ahead, and Robb saw Tyrion Lannister. The dwarf was on horseback, a ridiculous sight and a dangerous one. He wore no crown, but there was authority in his posture, in the way men listened even as they cursed him. He shouted orders, waving a short sword, his face smeared with soot. "Form up," Tyrion yelled at the gold cloaks. "You idiots! Form up! Spears forward! Stop running like frightened hens!" A gold cloak near him shouted back, "They're inside the gates. There's too many." "There are never too many," Tyrion snarled. "There are and why too many cowards." Robb watched him for a heartbeat, surprised. Tyrion Lannister was not a lion in armor. He was a clever man in a city of fools, trying to hold together walls made of greed. Their eyes met across the chaos. Tyrion's gaze flicked to the wolf banner, to Grey Wind, to Robb's face. Recognition flared. Calculation followed. Tyrion shouted something to a nearby man and pointed, not at Robb, but toward a cross street. Arrows hissed. Robb threw himself sideways as a shaft thudded into the post behind him. Another grazed his shoulder, slicing through leather and skin. Pain flashed hot, then dulled beneath adrenaline. "Archers!" someone screamed. Robb's men surged forward, shields up. The narrow lane became a funnel of bodies and steel. Gold cloaks braced, spears out, trying to make a wall. Robb knew walls. He had broken them in the woods when he took Jaime. He had broken them on the Green Fork when he danced around heavier men. Walls were strong only when fear held them together. He raised his voice, letting it carry like a whip. "They bleed," he roared. "They burn the city to save their pride. Push!" The Northmen hit the spear line. Wood cracked. Men grunted. A spear point punched into a shield. Someone screamed as steel found flesh. Grey Wind leapt onto the barricade, jaws snapping, eyes wild with purpose. He took a gold cloak by the face and dragged him down. The line wavered. Robb drove his shoulder into a shield and shoved. His sword flashed, quick, economical. He did not duel. He carved. He moved like a man whose life depended on speed, because it did. The gold cloak line broke. Men stumbled back, tripping over fallen bodies. Robb's men surged through the gap, and the lane opened into a small square where a statue of some long-dead king stood with his arm raised as if ordering the city to obey. The statue was splattered with blood. Robb caught his breath and looked ahead. The slope rose now. The streets narrowed again, climbing toward Aegon's high hill. The Red Keep's walls loomed above, darker than the night. Somewhere within those walls, Sansa Stark waited. Robb touched the cut on his shoulder and felt blood slick on his fingers. He wiped it on his cloak. "Forward," he said, and his voice was low now, not for the men, but for himself. Around them, the city screamed and burned, and the green wildfire danced in the gutters like mad light. The Lannisters had built their rule on fear and flame. Robb Stark meant to drown it in wolves. The Red Keep did not fall like a door kicked in. It fell like a lie exposed, suddenly, violently, and with a sound that made everyone who had believed it go quiet. Robb reached the inner yard with his boots slipping on blood and melted snow. The keep's outer defenses had been taken by brutal increments. A gatehouse seized, a stairway held, a courtyard fought over with men hacking at each other under banners that snapped in the wind. The stones were old. They had seen dragons. They did not care for wolves. The doors to the Great Hall were open when Robb arrived, as if someone inside had decided it was better to show surrender than be forced into it. The hall beyond was immense, its ceiling lost in shadow, its columns thick as trees. Tapestries hung like stiffened corpses of color. The Iron Throne sat at the far end, a jagged mountain of blades that caught torchlight and threw it back in hard, cruel shards. Robb stepped across the threshold and felt the air change. It was colder here, not from drafts but from power. This room had swallowed men whole. Joffrey Baratheon stood on the steps before the throne, a sword in his hands that looked too heavy for him. His face was pale beneath his golden curls. His lips pulled back in something that might have been fury if fear had not been stronger. "You," Joffrey spat, voice cracking. "You traitor." Cersei Lannister stood beside him, rigid as carved stone, her green eyes bright and furious. She did not look frightened. That was what frightened Robb most. A woman who had been cornered and still showed only contempt was a woman with teeth hidden. Between them and Robb stood two Kingsguard in white, Meryn Trant and Boros Blunt, men Robb knew by reputation if not by face. Their hands hovered near their sword hilts, but they did not move forward. Their eyes flicked to Grey Wind. Grey Wind padded into the hall, nails clicking softly on stone. He lifted his head and let out a low rumble that made the white cloak stiffen. Robb kept his sword lowered. He did not come here to duel a boy king on a pile of blades. He came to end a war. Joffrey Baratheon, Robb said, and the name tasted wrong in his mouth. You murdered Eddard Stark. You hold Sansa Stark hostage. Your men burned the Riverlands and slaughtered those who would not kneel. Joffrey's eyes flashed. My father. Your father is Robert Baratheon. Robb cut in and felt the room tense. Cersei's head snapped toward him, eyes narrowing, sharp as knives. And he is dead, and you are no king of mine. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Joffrey's hands shook on the sword. I will have you killed, he said, voice thin. I will have you. A movement near a column drew Robb's gaze. Sansa Stark stood half in shadow, her hands clasped so tightly her fingers were white. Her hair was still the auburn of Winterfell, but she looked older than Robb remembered. Her face was pale, her eyes too large, as if the city had hollowed her out. Tears shone at the edges of her lashes, but she did not let them fall. Robb's throat tightened. Sansa, he breathed, and for a moment the Iron Throne vanished. The Lannisters vanished. The war vanished. There was only his sister and the memory of her laughing in Winterfell's yard, chasing a cat with Arya. Cersei's gaze flicked toward Sansa, and Robb saw something ugly there. Ownership, like a woman looking at jewelry she might throw into a river rather than allow someone else to claim it. Robb took a step forward. The Kingsguard tensed. Stop, Cersei said softly, and there was poison in the gentleness. One more step, and my son will order her killed. Joffrey's eyes darted. His mouth opened as if to echo the threat, but his voice caught. Robb's gaze did not leave Sansa. Come to me, he said, keeping his voice calm. Walk. Sansa's lips parted. She glanced at Cersei, then at Robb, then down at the floor as if the space between them was full of blades. Cersei's hand moved, small, quick, toward a goblet on a side table. Robb saw it and understood without knowing how. Poison. A queen's last refuge. Grey Wind moved first. The direwolf's growl deepened into a snarl, and he sprang not toward Cersei, but toward the table, jaws snapping. The goblet shattered under his teeth, wine spraying. Cersei recoiled, eyes wide for the first time. The moment of surprise was all Robb needed. Now, Robb barked. His men surged in behind him, steel and fur and northern fury. The Kingsguard hesitated, only a heartbeat, but a heartbeat was an opening. Meej Mormont's axe swung, taking Boros Blunt's sword arm at the elbow. He screamed, stumbling back. Meryn Trant raised his blade, but Blackfish was on him, knocking it aside with a vicious twist. Joffrey screamed, high and panicked. He swung his sword wildly, not at Robb but at the air, as if he could cut away the fear. Robb closed the distance in 3 steps and kicked the blade from Joffrey's hands. The sword skittered across the stone and clanged against the base of the throne. Joffrey fell to his knees. Robb grabbed him by the collar and hauled him up. The boy king's breath came in ragged gasps. His eyes were huge, wet, furious. You can't, Joffrey whispered. You can't. Robb leaned close enough that Joffrey could smell the road on him, the sweat and blood and cold. Watch me, Robb said. Cersei's face twisted. You filthy. She began, and then stopped as Grey Wind's head turned toward her, teeth bared, saliva glistening in torchlight. Robb kept his grip on Joffrey. He looked past him to Sansa. Now, he said again, softer. Sansa moved. She walked down the hall as if each step cost her, but she walked. When she reached Robb, she stopped, trembling. Robb released Joffrey long enough to pull Sansa into his arms. For a heartbeat she was stiff, as if she did not remember how to be held safely. Then she broke, sobbing into his cloak, the sound muffled and raw. Robb closed his eyes and felt tears sting his own he did not let them fall. Not here. Not in this hall. He looked over Sansa's head at the Iron Throne. It seemed to watch him, its blades angled like hungry mouths. He thought of Ned Stark walking into this room with honor in his hands and leaving it without a head. Robb had taken the room. He had taken the city. Now he had to decide what the city would take from him in return. Tywin Lannister read the Raven's message twice before he allowed his face to change at all, and even then the change was not visible to most men. It was in the stillness of him, the way his fingers tightened on the parchment until the edges crumpled slightly. Tywin Lannister watched him like a man watching a cliff, afraid the stone might suddenly decide to fall. Adam Marbrand stood with his hands clasped behind his back, jaw clenched. "Well," Kevin said at last, unable to bear the silence. Tywin lowered the parchment. The lantern light painted hard lines across his face, making him look carved from old bone. "King's Landing has been taken," he said, and the words were so calm they might have been a report on the weather. "By Robb Stark." Marbrand's eyes widened. "That's not possible," he said reflexively. The city is a mouth," Tywin said. "It opens for coin, for hunger, for fear. It has opened for a wolf." Kevin stepped forward, voice urgent. "Cersei." Tywin's gaze did not flicker. "Alive," he said. "For now. Joffrey, alive. Taken. Hostages, all. The Red Keep has been breached." The word breached was a knife. Kevin's mouth tightened. "Where were the gold cloaks?" Marbrand demanded, anger flaring as if anger could make the impossible less humiliating. "Where was Tyrion?" Tywin's eyes narrowed slightly. "In a city, loyalty is a commodity," he said. "My son has learned that too late." Kevin swallowed. "We must ride," he said. "At once. We can be on the King's Road within the day. If we move fast, we run into rivers," Tywin said, and lifted a hand to the map pinned on the tent wall. Daggers marked crossings like wounds. "Edmure Tully has done what I expected him to be too foolish to do. He has held." Kevin stared at the map, then back at Tywin. "Then we force a crossing." Tywin's mouth curled, not in humor but in something like contempt for the very idea of difficulty. "We have tried," he said. "The Boy King's men burn our foragers and vanish. The Blackfish is in the reeds like a knife. Every bridge we approach becomes a slaughterhouse." Marbrand's voice was low. "Roose Bolton holds the north bank," he said. If he is competent," Tywin finished, "he will do exactly what Robb Stark ordered. If he is ambitious, he will do what I can make profitable." Kevin's eyes flicked. "You mean to buy him?" Tywin did not deny it. "Men are bought every day," he said. "Some with gold, some with titles, some with the promise of not dying." Outside, rain began to patter against the canvas, soft at first, then heavier, like fingers tapping impatiently. Kevin's voice roughened. "We cannot leave them there," he said. "We cannot let Stark hold the city. The realm will do what it always does," Tywin said. "It will watch and wait and decide which side looks like it will win." Marbrand leaned in. "Then we must make it look like we will win." Tywin's gaze cut to him. "Not by charging at walls," he said. "Walls can be climbed, a city can be taken, but a position can be made poisonous." Kevin frowned. "Poisonous how?" Tywin turned back to the map. His finger traced the river lines slowly, thoughtfully. "Robb Stark has done something bold," he said. "Boldness can be admirable. It is also predictable. He believes that because he has taken the city, the war must end around him. He expects ravens, envoys, please. He expects men to come to him." Tywin's eyes lifted, cold. "We will not go to him," he said. "Not in the way he expects." Marbrand's brow furrowed. "Then what?" Tywin's mouth tightened. "We will make the city a trap," he said. "We will starve it. We will cut its roads. We will let the river carry rumors and rot. And we will call friends to our side." Kevin's face darkened. "The Tyrells." Tywin nodded once. "Mace Tyrell has ambition," he said. "His daughter has beauty. Beauty has a way of turning swords." "And Stannis Baratheon?" Marbrand asked. Tywin's eyes narrowed. "Stannis will come," he said. "He will not allow a wolf to sit in his prize. Stannis is rigid. He breaks rather than bends. Robb Stark may find that taking a city is easier than keeping it. Kevin's voice was a whisper. Cersei will not forgive this. Tywin's gaze was steady. Forgiveness is not a currency I require, he said. He turned, reached for ink and parchment, and began to write letters with the same calm precision he used to order slaughter. His hand did not tremble. Men who trembled did not rule. Outside, the rain fell harder, washing the Riverlands in cold water. It could not wash away the stain of what had happened in King's Landing. Tywin Lannister did not rage. He did not shout. He did not break things. He simply began to plan how to break Robb Stark. The sea had a way of stripping men down to what they were. On the deck of the galley, with salt wind clawing at cloaks and armor, Stannis Baratheon looked like something forged rather than born. He stood at the prow, hands on the rail, eyes fixed on the city ahead. King's Landing rose from the shore like a bruise, its walls dark, its towers sharp. Smoke curled from within and above the gatehouse, where he had expected the crowned stag or the lion. Something else snapped in the wind. A wolf. Stannis did not move for a long moment. Davos Seaworth watched him, feeling the dread settle like lead in his stomach. Men behind them murmured, confused. Sailors pointed. Knights swore. Those are not Lannister banners, Davos said cautiously, because sometimes Stannis needed the obvious spoken aloud to give him something to strike. Stannis's jaw worked once. No, he said, voice flat. Melisandre stood a few steps back, her red hair whipping, her eyes gleaming as if she saw more than wind and smoke. The fire changes, she murmured. The shapes in the flame shift. Stannis turned his head slightly, enough to look at her without fully giving her the satisfaction of his attention. Did your fires show this? He demanded. Melisandre's smile was faint. They showed me a city, she said. A city in turmoil, a crown in blood, a beast with a wolf's face. Stannis's mouth tightened. Beasts do not wear crowns, he snapped. Men do, and the crown is mine. Davos glanced at the wolf banners again. He thought of Robb Stark, young, fierce, dangerous. A man who had won battles that older lords had insisted he could not. Davos had heard the stories. He had not expected to see those stories flying over the gates of the capital. Perhaps, Davos began carefully, perhaps it can be used. If the wolves have taken the city from the lions, then the lions are weaker. And you! Do not tell me to thank a traitor for stealing what is mine, Stannis said, and the words came out like stones thrown at a dog. Davos swallowed his frustration. He had learned when to push and when to let Stannis' own stubbornness exhaust itself. Then what do we do? He asked simply. Stannis stared at the city. The wolf banners snapped, arrogant. Smoke rose, thick. Somewhere within those walls, the boy king who had stolen Stannis' throne might be dead, or might be a prisoner, or might be still smirking behind steel. Stannis' hands tightened on the rail until his knuckles were pale. We land, he said. We take the city. Davos blinked. From the wolves. Stannis' eyes were hard. From anyone, he said. The law does not change because a wolf has sharp teeth. Melisandre's voice slid in like silk. The wolf may kneel, she said. All beasts kneel to fire. Stannis did not look at her. The wolf will kneel to the law, he said, or he will be put down. The galleys moved closer. The bay churned dark beneath them. Davos watched the shoreline, the city walls, the wolf banners, and felt tea. He sensed of the world shifting beneath his feet. Wars were meant to be between known enemies. Here, the enemies had changed places like masks in a mummer's show. As they drew near, a small boat rowed out from the river mouth, oars flashing. It bore a banner of truce, white cloth tied to a pole. In it sat men in northern cloaks, their faces set like stone. Davos glanced at Stannis. Envoys, he said. Stannis' mouth did not move, but his eyes narrowed. Bring them, he ordered. The small boat bumped against the galley's side. A rope ladder dropped. The northern men climbed, stiff, wary. The first to step onto the deck was no great lord, but he wore a wolf pin, and his eyes were the cold gray of winter. He bowed shallowly. "Stannis Baratheon," he said, voice carrying over the wind. "I come from Robb Stark, king in the north." Stannis's lips curled in something that was not quite a smile. "There is no king in the north," he said. "There is a rebel. Speak your message." The envoy's jaw tightened. "Robb Stark offers parley," he said. "He holds King's Landing. He holds the Lannisters. He offers the city to you, if you will give terms." A murmur went through the men on deck. Davos felt his heart thump. Offer the city? That was unexpected. Clever, perhaps, or desperate. Stannis stared at the envoy as if the man had offered him a poisoned cup. "Terms?" he repeated, contempt thick. "Yes," the envoy said, and the boldness in his voice was either bravery or foolishness. "The return of Sansa Stark, security for the north, recognition of northern rule and laws, and, Stannis snapped. The envoy swallowed. "And independence," he said, and the word hung like frost. Stannis's face went still. Davos knew that stillness. It was the stillness of a man deciding which limb to cut off to survive. "You will tell Robb Stark," Stannis said slowly, "that he has committed treason twice, once by taking the city that is mine, and again by daring to bargain with it. I will hear his parley, because it is useful to hear a traitor speak before he dies. But I will not grant him a kingdom carved from my realm." The envoy's eyes flickered, and for the first time Davos saw fear there. "He did not take the city to steal your crown," the man said quickly. "He took it to break the lions. He took it to save his sister. He took it," Stannis cut in. "That is enough." Davos stepped forward, careful. "Your Grace," he said, "if he truly will yield the city." Stannis's gaze snapped to him like a whip. "Do you think me so hungry I will accept scraps off a wolf's table?" he snarled. Davos held his ground. "I think you are owed what is yours," he said quietly. "And if the wolf can be made to help you claim it, then..." Stannis's jaw tightened. For a heartbeat Davos thought he might strike him. Then Stannis exhaled sharply, as if the wind itself offended him. "We land," Stannis said again, colder now. "We make camp, we parley, and if he will not kneel, we take what he sits on." Melisandre's smile deepened slightly, as if she enjoyed the idea of men burning for pride. Davos looked once more at the wolf banners, snapping above King's Landing's gates, and wondered how many more banners would fly before this was done. The realm was a storm now, and storms did not care who deserved what. The small council chamber felt smaller with wolves in it. Robb Stark sat at the table not in a crown but in mail, because he did not trust stone walls or gilded chairs. Gray wind lay near his feet, head on paws, eyes half closed but listening. The direwolf had learned the Red Keep smells quickly: fear, perfume, old blood, smoke. Sansa sat to Robb's right, wrapped in a cloak that had once belonged to their father. It was too large for her, but she clutched it as if the weight of it could keep her from drifting back into the nightmare she had lived. Across from them sat Tyrion Lannister, hands bound in chains that glinted dully. He sat straight anyway, chin lifted, as if posture could replace power. His face was bruised, one eye was swollen, yet there was still wit in him, coiled like a knife. Varys stood behind Tyrion, hands folded, expression mild. Peter Baelish lounged near the wall with his cane, his smile easy, his eyes bright with interest, as if this were a game he had paid to watch. Robb did not like Peter Baelish. He did not like the way the man's gaze slid over people as if measuring where best to cut. "You understand," Robb said to Tyrion, "that you live because you are useful." Tyrion's mouth twitched. "Most of us do," he said. "The ones who think they live because they are loved tend to die surprised." Sansa flinched slightly at the sound of his voice. Robb's hand tightened on the table edge. "You tried to burn my men with wildfire," Robb said. "I tried to keep a city from being sacked," Tyrion replied, and there was heat under the calm now. "I tried to keep women from being dragged into alleys. I tried to keep children from being trampled under boots. If you want to condemn me for that, then condemn away." Robb stared at him. He had expected excuses. He had not expected conviction. It made Tyrion Lannister harder to hate cleanly, and Robb disliked that complication. Varys's soft voice drifted in. "The city has been remarkably restrained," he said, as if commenting on a dinner. "The small folk notice such things. They are frightened, but they are not yet hopeless." "Hopeless men riot," Peter Baelish said lightly. "Frightened men listen." Robb's gaze slid to him. "And what do you listen for, Lord Peter?" Peter Baelish's smile widened. "Opportunity," he said, as if it were a joke and not a confession. Robb's fingers itched for his sword. He forced them still. A knock came at the door. A northern guardsman entered, face tight. "Envoys from Stannis Baratheon, my king," he said. Robb's stomach clenched. "Send them in," he said. The envoys arrived, stiff in black and yellow, with a look of men who had expected to be greeted by lions and found wolves instead. They bowed, minimal, and delivered Stannis's message like a verdict. Stannis Baratheon would parley, but he demanded that Robb Stark kneel, deliver up Joffrey Baratheon for execution, and surrender the city without conditions. He offered mercy in return, spoken as if me. RCY were a coin Robb should be grateful to receive. When the envoys left, silence stretched. Sansa's fingers tightened around their father's cloak. "He won't help us," she whispered. Robb stared at the table. "He will help himself," he said. Tyrion's laugh was quiet. "Stannis," he said, rigid as a drawn sword. "He will snap before he bends. You should have taken his offer when it was hypothetical." Robb's eyes narrowed. "And what would you have done if you were me?" Tyrion shrugged as much as chains allowed. "I would have killed Joffrey and blamed the chaos," he said. "I would have thrown Cersei in a cell and let her rot. I would have offered Stannis the city with a bow and a smile, and I would have demanded the North's freedom in the same breath. He would refuse, of course, because he refuses air when it is not his. And then you would have a second war." Robb's jaw tightened. "You speak as if war is inevitable." Tyrion's eyes were tired. "War is a habit," he said. "Westeros is addicted." Varys's smile was faint. "Peace is possible," he murmured. Peter Baelish's eyes gleamed. "Peace is profitable," he corrected. Robb's gaze snapped to him. "You will not profit from my sister," Robb said, voice low. Peter Baelish's smile did not fade, but his eyes sharpened. "Of course not," he said smoothly. "I only wish for the realm to be stable." Robb believed him the way a man believed a snake when it said it only wished to sun itself. Then the raven landed. It fluttered in through the open window, black wings beating, and dropped onto the table with the casual arrogance of a creature that did not care about kings. A strip of parchment was tied to its leg with red string. Robb's hand moved before he thought, untwisting the string, unfolding the message. He read it once, then again. The room seemed to tilt. Sansa leaned toward him, eyes wide. "Robb?" she whispered. Robb's mouth was dry. His fingers tightened on the parchment until it crinkled. "The Iron Islands have raised their banners," he said, and his voice sounded distant to his own ears. "Balon Greyjoy has declared himself king. He has taken Moat Cailin." Sansa's breath caught. "No," she whispered. Robb's gaze lifted, staring past the chamber walls as if he could see the north across leagues of land and sea. Moat Cailin was the neck, the choke point, the lock on their home. Tyrion's expression shifted. Satisfaction, not because the north suffered, but because the world insisted on cruelty. "There," he said softly. "The price." Robb's jaw clenched until it hurt. He thought of Winterfell, of Bran's laughter, of Rickon's sticky hands, of the smell of pine and cold stone. He thought of men who had sworn to him and now sat in his conquered city, far from their homes. He had taken King's Landing like a knife thrown true. Now the knife was lodged in a place that might bleed him dry. Outside, the city's bells began to ring again. Slow, heavy, as if announcing not victory but the end. The XT turning of the wheel. In the distance, over the roofs, the wolf banners snapped in the winter wind, proud and defiant, unaware that the north was being clawed at even now. Robb Stark looked down at the map on the council table, at the lines that represented rivers and roads, and saw how small all his triumph was compared to the realm's hunger. He had saved his sister. He had broken the lion's den. And still the war widened around him, a dark sea that would not be stilled by any crown. The Iron Throne did not welcome wolves. It loomed behind Robb like a threat made of metal, every blade turned inward, every edge reminding him that this seat was built to wound whoever dared to claim it. The torchlight caught in the jagged spines and threw back 1,000 cold reflections, as if the dead kings who had sat there still watched to see what fresh fool would bleed. Robb did not sit. He stood on the stone below the steps, mail creaking when he shifted his weight, his sword at his hip and Grey Wind's massive presence at his knee like a living shadow. Great Jon Umber stood to one side, fists clenched, eyes bright with the hunger of a man who had finally brought war to the enemy's hearth. Blackfish stood to the other, quiet and hard, the smile gone from his mouth. Sansa hovered near Robb's shoulder, wrapped in their father's cloak, her face pale but composed with the careful dignity of a girl who had learned that falling apart was something you did only in solitude. The doors opened, and the sound of them echoed through the hall like a judgment. Stannis Baratheon's envoys entered with the stiff certainty of men who believed law was armor. They wore black and yellow, not rich, not showy, but clean and severe. One carried a scroll sealed with the crowned stag. Another kept his hand near his sword as if he expected wolves to leap at him and prove him right. They bowed to Robb only as much as necessity demanded. "Robb Stark," said the foremost envoy, voice clipped. He did not say king. He did not say my lord. He spoke Robb's name the way a magistrate spoke the name of a man brought before the bench. "By command of Stannis Baratheon, rightful king of the Undulls and the Rhoynar and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, protector of the realm." Great Jon Umber's laugh burst out like a bark. "He forgot breaker of teeth and collector of other men's castles," he boomed. The envoy's face tightened. "I deliver terms," he finished, and held out the scroll as if it were a blade. Robb did not take it. He nodded once to Blackfish. Blackfish stepped forward, took the scroll, broke the seal, and read with the same calm he'd shown on a battlefield. The words were short. Stannis's words always were. They did not waste breath on softness. "Kneel. Surrender the city. Deliver the pretender Joffrey Baratheon for execution. Deliver Cersei Lannister and all captives. Put down your banners. Accept mercy. Any demand for independence is treason." Blackfish's eyes lifted from the parchment. His look said what his mouth did not. "There it is." Robb felt Sansa's hand tighten on his sleeve. He did not look at her because if he looked he might show too much. He could not afford to show weakness in this room, not with the Iron Throne behind him and the stag's envoys before him. "You speak of mercy," Robb said, voice steady, "as if it is a thing Stannis Baratheon is known to carry." The envoy's eyes stayed hard. "Mercy is offered to those who submit, he said. "Stannis Baratheon offers you your life, your men's lives. You have committed treason by taking what is his." "I took it from lions," Robb replied. "I took it to save my sister. I took it because Tywin Lannister was burning my people while his son murdered my father." The envoy's mouth twisted. "Your father died by order of the king." "The boy is no king," Great Jon snarled. The envoy ignored him. "Stannis Baratheon does not bargain with rebels," he said. "He accepts surrender, or he destroys those who refuse it." Robb's gaze moved to the Iron Throne again. He remembered Ned's last steps in this hall. He remembered the way honor had been mocked like a jester's song. He remembered the sound of a crowd cheering as a blade fell. "If Stannis Baratheon wants King's Landing," Robb said, "he can have it. I do not want his chair. I do not want this city. It stinks of lies. Let him take it, and let him sit on every blade until he learns what rule costs." The envoys blinked, surprised despite themselves. Robb continued, slower now, letting each word land. But he will not have it for free. Not from me. Not after what my house has paid. He will not keep my sister as a bargaining chip. He will not demand my neck because I did what he has not yet managed to do. The envoy's voice sharpened. What do you demand? Robb's mouth was dry. He could taste the risk in the air, and behind the risk the larger fear. The north bleeding far away while he stood here arguing about paper and pride. I demand my sister's safety under the king's peace, Robb said. I demand that northern men may return home without being hunted like outlaws. I demand that the north governs itself under its own laws, with no southern lord placing his boot on our neck again. Call it independence if you like. Call it a settlement. I do not care for the name. I care for the truth of it. The envoy's eyes turned flinty. Stannis Baratheon will never grant it, he said. Then Stannis Baratheon will never have peace. Great John growled, stepping forward, the sound of his boots like a threat. Blackfish lifted a hand, stilling him without a word. His voice was quiet but edged. Your king wants the city. Fine, he can have it. But if he comes for it with fire and blood, he will take it over a mountain of corpses that the realm will lay at his feet. The envoy's jaw clenched. You presume to lecture Stannis Baratheon on law? I presume to warn you on war, Robb said. Sansa's voice came then, small but clear. Tell him I am here, she said, looking at the envoys. Her eyes were bright, not with tears now but with something colder. Tell him the Lannisters are chained. Tell him the city is frightened. And tell him if he burns it to prove a point, the small folk will remember his point when they spit on his grave. The envoys stared at her. Perhaps they expected a girl in silk who would faint. They saw a Stark instead. The foremost envoy recovered, stiffening. I will carry your words, he said, and his eyes returned to Robb. But Stannis Baratheon does not bend. Robb nodded once. Nor do I, he said. When the envoys were gone and the doors shut behind them, Great John exhaled a curse like steam. He'll come for us, he said, almost delighted. Let him. We'll crack that stag's antlers. Blackfish's gaze drifted to the windows, to the faint glow of torches far below, to the city that still did not know what it had become. He'll come, he agreed, but there was no delight in it. And so will Tywin. And so will every hungry lord who thinks there's profit in a city held by wolves. Robb's hand found Sansa's fingers, cold in his own. He squeezed once, and she squeezed back, as if anchoring herself. The throne behind them gleamed in the torchlight like a mouth full of teeth, waiting to see which of them would bleed first. Robb went into the city the next morning without a crown and without ceremony, because ceremony made men forget what they were protecting. He wore a plain gray cloak over his mail and kept his helm off. If someone wanted to kill him, they would try regardless. Hiding would only make him look afraid. Gray wind padded at his side, enormous, silent, drawing eyes the way fire drew moths. The direwolf's presence made men step back without thinking, giving Robb a circle of space in streets that usually had none. King's Landing in daylight was uglier than it had been at night. The smoke that had seemed dramatic in darkness now lay over the roofs like grime. The streets were slick with old filth and fresh blood. The walls were pocked where arrows had struck, and here and there a body still lay in the gutter with a blanket thrown over it, as if cloth could make death less offensive. They had set up bread lines near the markets, pulling flour and grain from storehouses Robb's men had seized. He had ordered it done quickly, because hunger was a spark and sparks became fires. Now he watched the lines stretch down the street. Men and women wrapped in rags, cheeks hollow, eyes too bright. Children clung to skirts, hands out, faces smeared with soot. A septa stood near a chipped statue, murmuring prayers with cracked lips, her hands folded as if she could hold the city together by faith alone. A cart creaked forward, and Northmen began handing out loaves. At first the small folk surged like a wave, and Robb saw fear flare in his own men, the fear of being swallowed by desperation. He stepped forward, raising his voice. "Back!" he shouted. "You will have bread. All of you. You will have it if you keep order." A man with a beard like a nest spat. "Order?" he snarled. "Where was order when the Queen's gold cloaks beat us for wanting food?" A woman hissed, eyes wild. "Wolves in the Red Keep," she muttered. "Wolves come to eat us too." Robb met her gaze and felt the weight of it. He wanted to say, "I am not here for you. I am here for my sister, for my people." But kings did not have the luxury of being honest about what they did not care for. If he let the city think he did not care, it would tear itself apart. He lifted his hands slightly, palms out, showing he held no weapon. "I am Robb Stark," he said, and heard the murmurs ripple. Some had heard his name, some had spat it, some had prayed to be spared by it. "My men will not beat you for bread. They will not burn your homes for sport. If any man wearing my wolf steals from you or harms you, bring his name to me and I will see him punished." A thin laugh rose from somewhere in the line. "We can't even get close to lords," someone said. "We're dirt." Robb's gaze swept the faces. "Then I am in the dirt with you," he said, and stepped closer to the cart. Grey Wind's ears flicked. The direwolf's eyes narrowed, tracking movement. Robb did not need to turn to know there were men watching him with something sharper than hunger. A gold cloak captain stood near a doorway, his helm under his arm, his eyes cautious. He wore the city's colors, but his stance was that of a man trying to decide which way the wind would blow hardest. Robb walked to him. "Your name," Robb said. The man hesitated. "Harwin," he said at last. "Harwin, sir. Captain Harwin." Robb nodded as if he accepted it without judgment. "Do you have men still loyal to you?" he asked. Harwin's jaw tightened. "I have men who want to live," he said. "Then you have the same thing I do," Robb replied. "Tell them this. The gold cloaks who keep order will be paid. The ones who prey on small folk will be hanged. If they want to wear a cloak in this city, they will wear it for the city, not for the Queen's purse." Harwin swallowed. "And if the Queen?" Robb's eyes hardened. "The Queen is my prisoner," he said simply, and watched Harwin flinch at the bluntness. "If any gold cloak thinks the lion still feeds them, they will learn what hunger feels like." Harwin stared at him, then nodded once. It was not loyalty. It was surrender of a different sort, the surrender of a man choosing survival over pride. Robb turned back to the bread line. A child had moved too close to Grey Wind, staring at him with fascinated terror. The child's hand hovered, trembling. Grey Wind lowered his head slightly, sniffed, then huffed warm air. The child squealed and laughed, then slapped a tiny hand against Grey Wind's fur and ran back to his mother. A sound rose in the line then, like a sigh moving through a crowd. Not love, not gratitude, something more cautious. The recognition that the thing they had feared might not devour them immediately. Robb watched the loaves being handed out and felt the strain in his own chest ease by a fraction. If the city starved, it would riot. If it rioted, he would be forced to kill the very people he claimed to protect. And if he killed them, he would become what the realm already said he was. A woman near the front received her loaf, then looked at Robb with eyes like stones. "Will you kill the boy?" she asked suddenly. Robb blinked. "What boy?" "The king," she said and spat the word. "Joffrey." Around her, others leaned in, hungry for more than bread, hungry for justice, hungry for blood that would mean their own suffering had a target. Robb felt Grey Wind shift beside him, as if sensing the change. "I will do what I must," Robb said carefully. "That's not an answer," the woman snapped. No, he thought. It was not. It was a king's answer, and king's answers were always half a lie. He moved on, leaving the question hanging like a blade over his own neck, because he could feel the shape of it. If he did not kill Joffrey, the city would hate him for sparing a monster. If he did, Stannis would demand the corpse as proof of obedience, and Tywin would carve his way through the realm for vengeance. Either choice burned. As Robb walked back toward the Red Keep, the city's eyes full. "Owed him," He felt them like weight, like rain, like the first cold breath of winter. He had taken the city in one night. Keeping it would take everything else. Robb did not like the sound of cages closing. It was a practical sound. Iron on stone, locks clicking, bars settling into their place. It was the sound of keeping danger contained. It was also the sound that turned men into beasts, and Robb had seen too many beasts made by confinement to pretend it did not matter. They kept the Lannisters in a set of chambers that had once belonged to some forgotten lordling who had died in the Red Keep's shadow. The rooms were not deep dungeons. Robb did not want them hidden away where knives could find them unseen. He wanted them close, watched, controlled, and always within reach. The guards at the door wore Stark cloaks now. Their faces were hard, their eyes wary. They looked at the prisoners as if looking at a snake that might suddenly sprout wings. Inside, Cersei Lannister sat behind iron bars with her back straight, her hands folded in her lap as though she were receiving guests in her solar. Her hair was loose, not because she was careless, but because she refused to allow anyone else the intimacy of pinning it. Her green eyes were bright and furious, but there was calculation there too, like a woman counting the steps between herself and a knife. Joffrey paced like a wolf that had been denied the hunt. His hands were stained, whether with his own blood from some cut he had not noticed or another's from the night's chaos. His eyes flicked to Robb with hatred so pure it almost looked like devotion. Tommen sat in a corner clutching a wooden lion toy, small fingers white around it. He looked up when Robb entered, then down again quickly, as if eye contact might be punished. Myrcella hugged her knees, her hair falling over her face, quiet in a way that made Robb uneasy. Quiet children carried storms inside them. Robb entered with Sansa beside him. He did not bring a host. He did not want the Lannisters to feel the comfort of an audience, the ability to perform. He wanted them raw. Cersei's gaze slid to Sansa first, and Robb felt his sister stiffen. Cersei smiled. "My sweet girl," Cersei said softly, voice like honey that had been left too long in the sun. "They finally let you out of your cage." Sansa's hand tightened in Robb's. "It was your cage," she said, and her voice did not shake. Cersei's smile widened. "All cages belong to someone," she replied. "You will learn that." Robb stepped closer to the bars. "You will not speak to her as if you own her," he said. Cersei's eyes turned to him. "You speak as if you own me," she said, and the contempt in it was sharp. "Do you enjoy it, boy? Holding lions behind bars? Is that what the North teaches its kings?" Robb's jaw tightened. "The North teaches its kings that lies kill," he said. "And your lies killed my father." Joffrey stopped pacing abruptly, his face twisted. "Your father was a traitor," he spat, and the word came out gleeful. "He deserved." Robb's hand moved faster than thought. He struck Joffrey across the mouth with the back of his glove. The sound cracked in the small room like a whip. Joffrey stumbled back, eyes wide, more shocked than hurt. Blood welled at his lip. "You will not speak his name," Robb said, voice low, and the cold in it made Tommen whimper softly. Cersei surged to her feet, fingers curling around the bars. "Don't you dare touch him," she snarled, and all the mask fell away, revealing raw maternal fury. Robb did not flinch. "He is my prisoner," he said. "He is alive because I choose it." Cersei's laughter was thin. "You think you can choose," she said. "You are a child playing with knives. Tywin Lannister will carve you open and hang your skin from your own walls." Robb looked at Tommen, at Myrcella, then back to Cersei. "Tywin Lannister is trapped behind rivers," he said. "He can threaten all he wants from there." Cersei's eyes glittered. "Rivers freeze," she said. Robb felt something in him tighten. He thought of winter. He thought of the neck. He thought of Moat Cailin, now in Greyjoy hands. Rivers froze, yes, and when they did, armies marched. Sansa's voice came quietly. "Why did you make him do it?" she asked, and Robb realized she was not speaking to Joffrey. She was speaking to Cersei. "Why did you make him kill my father?" Cersei's expression shifted, amused, almost indulgent. "Because your father was a fool," she said. "Because he thought honor could protect him in a den of vipers. Because if he had lived, he would have taken my children from me and called it justice." Sansa's face tightened. "He would have saved the realm," she whispered. Cersei leaned forward, eyes bright. "The realm does not want saving," she said softly. "It wants feeding. It wants distracting. It wants someone to hate so it can pretend its own hands are clean." Robb's hand squeezed Sansa's. "Enough," he said. He turned to Joffrey, who stood with blood on his lip and rage in his eyes. "You will be quiet," Robb said. "You will eat what you are given. You will not harm anyone. If you do, I will take something you cannot live without." Joffrey's voice trembled with fury. "You can't threaten me," he hissed. "You are nothing," Robb said, and the bluntness of it made even Cersei blink. "You are a boy who wears a crown that belongs to another, and because you wore it, you killed my father. That is all you are to me." Joffrey's face went red. He lunged toward the bars as if he might claw through them. Grey Wind's growl rose, deep and immediate. Joffrey froze. Tommen's wooden lion slipped from his fingers and clattered to the floor. Robb looked at Tommen then, at the little boy's terrified eyes. The boy had done nothing. He was a hostage like Sansa had been, pawn built from flesh. Robb felt the war's ugliness settle in his gut again. There was no clean victory. There were only choices that stained you in different colors. He turned away. "Guard them," he ordered, and the Stark men at the door nodded. As Robb and Sansa left, Cersei's voice followed them through. The bars soft and venomous. "You will learn," she said. "All of you. The city will eat your innocence, and the realm will chew your bones. And when you are tired and desperate, you will do things you swear you never would." Robb did not look back, but the sound of Joffrey's pacing resumed behind them, and it followed Robb down the corridor like the scrape of a blade being sharpened. The parley was held on ground that smelled of salt and damp grass, not far from where Stannis' ships had come ashore like black beetles crawling from the sea. Robb rode out with a small escort because large escorts turned meetings into battles. Great John Umber wanted to bring 200 men and crack skulls for sport, but Robb had refused. He came with Blackfish and the Great John and a handful of others who could be trusted to keep their swords sheathed when insult was thrown like ash. Grey Wind ran alongside, tongue lolling slightly, breath steaming. Stannis Baratheon waited near a rough table set up on a rise. A map was spread across it, weighted at the corners by stones. Stannis stood over it in black armor that drank the light, his jaw set, his eyes the color of stormwater. Davos Seaworth hovered near him like a man who had learned to stand close enough to speak and far enough to survive. Melisandre stood a few paces back in red, unmoving, her gaze fixed on Robb with the calm interest of someone watching a candle burn down. Baratheon spearmen formed a loose half-circle, watching Robb as if he were a wild animal that might suddenly decide to bite. Robb dismounted. Great John and Blackfish dismounted as well. The air between them and Stannis' men felt tight, as if the slightest spark would set it alight. Stannis did not bow. "Robb Stark," he said. He did not say king. He did not say traitor either, though the word hung in his stare. "Stannis Baratheon," Robb replied. He did not bow either. He had bowed too much in his life already, and each bow had cost him. Stannis' eyes flicked to Grey Wind, then back to Robb. "You have stolen my city," he said flatly. Robb kept his voice even. "I took it from Lannisters," he said. "I did not take it to sit your chair. I took it to end their hold on the realm and to free my sister." Stannis' mouth tightened. "You took it?" he repeated, as if repeating could make the law manifest in the air. "It is mine. You will surrender it. You will kneel, and you will deliver the pretender for execution." Great John Umber made a sound like a growl, but Blackfish's hand touched his arm, restraining him.
Robb met Stannis' gaze.
"I will surrender the city," Robb said, and watched Stannis blink, just once, as if the world had failed to behave properly. I will deliver Joffrey Baratheon and Cersei Lannister to you, alive with chains on them. I will deliver the Red Keep intact. I will even deliver the gold cloaks who remained loyal to the lions, so you may hang them in the streets if it pleases your sense of justice. Stannis' eyes narrowed. Even, he said, suspicion sharpening. Robb's hand tightened briefly on the reins he still held. In return, Robb said, you will swear before gods and men that Sansa Stark will be protected under your peace until she is safely returned to the north. You will swear that northern men who marched south under my banner may return home without punishment. And you will recognize the North's right to govern itself, as it has done for thousands of years. Stannis' face went still. No, he said, and the word was as final as a door slammed. Robb felt anger flare in his chest, hot and immediate. He forced it down because anger made you stupid. Then you will have war, Robb said quietly. Stannis' eyes hardened. I already have war, he said. You are simply another rebel to crush. Davos stepped forward slightly, his expression pained. Your Grace, he began, voice careful. If the city can be taken without a siege, Stannis cut him off with a glance. Silence, he snapped, and the command was sharp enough that even the wind seemed to pause. Davos fell back, but his eyes stayed on Robb, and in them Robb saw something close to apology. Melisandre's voice slid into the space like smoke. The wolf does not kneel, she murmured. The fire will make him. Great John Umber's hand went to his sword. Say that again, he snarled. Robb lifted a hand, stopping him. His gaze stayed on Stannis. You want the city, Robb said. Take it from me without burning it. Let the realm see you as a king, not a conqueror. Grant the North what it already holds by blood and distance, and you will have one less enemy. Stannis' jaw clenched. The realm is one, he said. It is not a cake to be cut for every hungry lord. Robb's voice sharpened. Then the realm will break, he said. It is already breaking. You can either bind it with wisdom or you can pound it with law until the pieces cut your hands. Stannis' eyes flashed. Do not lecture me, he snapped. I am the only one in this realm who cares for law. And where was the law when my father was murdered? Robb shot back, and the bitterness in it surprised him with its rawness. Where was the law when the Riverlands burned? Stannis' gaze did not soften. The law will punish them, he said, when I sit the throne. Robb's mouth curled, not in amusement but in disbelief. Then you will punish them, he said, because you are the law. Stannis' face tightened further, as if the words were a hook that had caught him somewhere he did not like. You speak too freely, he said. I speak as a man who has buried too many boys, Robb replied. For a long moment they stood in silence, staring at each other across the map table, across the thin strip of ground that separated two armies. The sea wind tugged at Cloaks. Somewhere behind Stannis, a gull screamed, harsh and lonely. Davos cleared his throat gently. There may be a way, he said, and every eye snapped to him. He swallowed, then continued, voice steadying. Your Grace, you need the city. Robb Stark needs to go north. The Iron Islands are in rebellion. If you force him to fight you here, the North will burn and the realm will still be at war, only worse. Stannis' eyes narrowed. I did not ask for your counsel, he said. No, Davos replied quietly, but you need it. The defiance in Davos's voice was small, but it was tea. Here, it hung in the air like a candle flame refusing to go out. Stannis' jaw worked. He stared at Davos, then at Robb, then at the wolf at Robb's side. You will kneel, Stannis said finally, not to Davos but to Robb, as if clinging to the one thing that made him feel upright. That is non-negotiable. Robb's heart pounded. He thought of Sansa. He thought of Moat Cailin. He thought of his men, tired and far from home, and the city behind him that could swallow them in riots and fire if he faltered. He thought of his father's honor. He thought of his father's head. I will not kneel, Robb said. Stannis' face went cold. Then you will die, he said, and there was no theatrics in it. Only certainty, the certainty of a man who believed himself chosen by right and prepared to kill for it. Robb nodded once, as if accepting a weather report. "Then we will see which of us the gods favor," he said. He mounted again, and Grey Wind moved with him. Great John and Blackfish followed, their faces grim. As Robb rode back toward the city walls, he felt Stannis' gaze on his back like a spear point. Behind him, the sea churned dark, and Melisandre's red silhouette stood unmoving, as if watching a future already written in flame. That night, the Red Keep felt like a corpse dressed in silk. The halls were too quiet in places, the silence broken only by the distant clank of armor and the occasional echo of a shout outside as soldiers settled into new routines. Robb could feel the city pressing in around them, vast and restless, as if the walls could not decide whether to accept the wolves or spit them out. He sat with Sansa in a small chamber they had found away from the main corridors, a place with a modest hearth and a narrow window that looked out over the black sprawl of rooftops. The fire was low, its warmth more symbolic than real. Grey Wind lay near it, curled like a great gray shadow, eyes half closed. Sansa held a cup of watered wine in both hands, not drinking, simply needing something to hold. The light caught in her hair, and for a moment Robb saw the girl she had been before the city had taught her fear. "You shouldn't have hit him," Sansa said quietly. Robb's jaw tightened. "He spoke Father's name," he said. "I know," she replied. Her gaze stayed on the fire. "He speaks it to hurt people. It makes him feel important." Robb swallowed. His throat felt scraped raw from shouting orders and swallowing anger. "He is important," he said bitterly, "because we let him be." Sansa's fingers tightened on the cup. "No," she said softly, "because Mother and Father believed the wrong people. Because we came south thinking law mattered. Because I thought a prince could be kind." The confession fell between them, quiet and heavy. Robb looked at her, and something in his chest twisted. He had been fighting armies while Sansa had been fighting smiles and whispers and hands that wanted to own her. He had thought battles were the worst of it. Now he understood that a cage could be worse than a blade. "I'm sorry," he said, and the words sounded too small. Sansa's lips trembled. Then she made them still. "Don't be sorry," she said. "Just don't let them take me again." Robb's hand reached out, then hesitated, then rested on her shoulder. "They won't," he promised, and felt the danger of promises. Promises in King's Landing were often the last thing you said before everything went wrong. Sansa looked at him then, and her eyes were brighter than the fire. "Stannis Baratheon," she said. "I saw him once when I was little. Father took me to watch the tourney. He looked at everyone like they were incorrect, like the world had made a mistake." Robb let out a humorless breath. "He looked at me the same way," he said. "He will not help you," Sansa said. She did not sound afraid. She sounded certain, and certainty from Sansa was a new thing, forged in pain. "He says he cares for law," Robb muttered, "but his law leaves no room for us." Sansa's gaze drifted to the window, to the distant lights of the city. "No Southern king ever will," she said, and the bitterness in her voice startled Robb. It was not a child's bitterness. It was a woman's. Robb stared at her. "You sound like Arya," he said softly. Sansa's mouth twitched. "Arya would say it louder," she replied, "and with more swearing." Robb almost smiled, but the smile died quickly. "The Iron Islands have taken Moat Cailin," he said, and watched Sansa flinch, the news striking her like cold water. "Balon Greyjoy calls himself king." Sansa's cup shook. "Winterfell," she whispered. Robb's hands clenched on his knees. "I don't know," he admitted. "I don't know what's happening there. I have sent ravens. If they get through, if anyone answers." Sansa's voice was small again. "Bran," she whispered. "Rickon." Robb felt his stomach turn. He could fight a man with a sword. He could outmaneuver Tywin Lannister. But he could not ride fast enough to be in two places at once. not when the realm itself pulled him apart. Sansa looked back to the fire. "The city is going to turn on you," she said suddenly. Robb blinked. "What?" Sansa's eyes were sharp now, observing. "They don't love you," she said. "They don't know you. They only know you are not the lions they hated yesterday. Today they hate you because you're here and they're still hungry and frightened. If Stannis comes, they will hate him too. They hate whoever is nearest." Robb stared at her, and in that moment he saw how the city had taught her to read people the way a soldier read terrain. He felt a pulse of pride and grief at once. "What do I do?" he asked before he could stop himself. Sansa's gaze lifted to him, steady. "Feed them," she said. "Punish your men when they hurt them. Don't let anyone think you are weak. And don't let anyone think you are cruel for no reason. They can forgive cruelty if they understand it. They cannot forgive weakness if it makes them afraid." Robb's throat tightened. "You shouldn't have had to learn that," he whispered. Sansa's mouth hardened. "I did," she said. "So use it." Gray wind shifted, ears flicking as if he sensed something outside. Robb listened, and in the distance he heard bells, slow, heavy, ringing again. Not alarm this time, something else. A sound that carried through the city like a warning given too late. Sansa's eyes widened slightly. That's not normal," she said. Robb stood, moving to the window. He looked out over the rooftops and saw torches moving in clusters. Not in orderly patrols, but in the chaotic swarming of a crowd. A chant rose, faint at first, then stronger as it moved through the streets. "Bread," the voices called. "Bread, bread." Robb felt the hairs on his arms rise. Hunger was waking again, and hunger did not care about kings. He turned back to Sansa, and she looked at him with the calm fear of someone who knew exactly what a crowd could do. "Go," she said quietly, "before they come to you." Robb grabbed his sword and his cloak, and gray wind rose with him, massive and silent. As they left the chamber, the raven cage's shadow still lay across the wall, like bars that could never truly be escaped. Flea Bottom was a wound the city refused to heal. It stank of old piss and smoke and cheap wine, the air thick with bodies packed too tight. When Robb arrived, the streets were already choked with people. Men with clubs and knives, women with stones in their hands, children perched on barrels like crows on carrion. Torches bobbed, casting wild light over faces twisted by hunger and fury. A flower cart lay overturned in the center of a narrow square, white powder spilling into the mud like snow turned filthy. Men scrambled in it, scooping handfuls into sacks, into shirts, into mouths. Northmen tried to hold a line, shields up, eyes wide. They were warriors used to fighting men with swords, not starving crowds who had nothing to lose. "Back!" a northern sergeant shouted. "Back or we!" A rock struck his helm with a clang. Another hit a man's cheek, splitting skin. The line wavered. Robb pushed forward, gray wind snarling at his side, and the crowd's noise shifted as people saw him. Some shouted his name, some cursed it, some spat. The chant of bread twisted into something uglier. "Wolf!" someone screamed. "Wolf King! Liar!" another voice spat. "You promised." Robb raised his voice, forcing it through the chaos. "There is bread," he shouted. "There will be more. Step back from the carts. Let it be distributed." A man with a scarred face lunged forward, eyes bloodshot. "My boy died yesterday," he screamed. "He died begging for crusts while your men drink in the Red Keep. You want us to step back? You want us to die polite?" Robb felt the crowd surge around the words like a tide. Politeness was a luxury hunger had eaten. He stepped toward the man, keeping his hands visible, blade sheathed. "What is your name?" Robb demanded. The man blinked, confused by the question. "What does it matter?" he shouted. "It matters because I cannot punish a crowd," Robb said, voice cold now. "But I can punish men." A woman screamed, "Punish the lions!" And a cheer rose, wild and hungry. Robb's gaze cut through the faces. He saw a boy with a sharpened stick, eyes bright with the thrill of violence. He saw a woman with a baby on her hip, thin as bone, tears cutting clean lines through grime. He saw men who looked less hungry than angry, men with better boots than beggars, eyes darting, stirring the crowd like sticks in a fire. Insiders. His stomach sank. Hunger was one thing, manipulation was another. A gold cloak captain, Harwin, the one from the bread line, forced his way into the square with 6 men, dragging a man by the collar. The dragged man struggled, spitting curses, his hands still dusted with flour. He was cutting the sacks, Harwin shouted over the noise. Not taking bread, ruining it. The crowd roared, outraged not at the crime but at the interruption. Robb stepped in front of Harwin and looked at the captive. The man's eyes met his, and Robb saw no desperation there. He saw satisfaction. "Who paid you?" Robb asked quietly. The man laughed. "Ed," flour flecking his lips. "Paid?" he jeered. "We pay ourselves in blood." Gray Wind's growl deepened, and the captive's laugh faltered. Robb leaned closer. "Who paid you?" he repeated, each word a blade. The man's eyes flicked, not to the crowd, too obvious. Robb followed the glance. A balcony overlooked the square, half hidden behind a sagging awning. A man stood there with a cane, his posture relaxed as if watching a play. Peter Baelish. His smile was thin, amused, his eyes bright with calculation. Robb felt something cold crawl up his spine. Littlefinger lifted his cup slightly, as if in salute. Robb's jaw tightened. He turned back to the captive. "Hang him," Robb said to Harwin, and watched the crowd's roar change. Outrage turned to a hungry fascination. Men loved executions almost as much as bread. Harwin hesitated. "Here?" he asked, voice tight. Robb's eyes stayed on the balcony. "Here," he said. "Now. Let them see that I do not tolerate thieves, whether they steal flour or stir riots." The captive's face contorted. "You can't," he spat, the bravado cracking. "You can't just." Robb's voice cut through him. "I can," he said, "and I will." Harwin's men hauled the captive toward a beam where a rope could be thrown. The crowd surged, shouting, half cheering, half cursing. A stone flew, striking a gold cloak. A spear but shoved a man back. The line trembled again. Robb raised his voice. "If you want bread, step back," he shouted. "If you want blood, step forward. But understand this. If you step forward, you will die." It was a brutal thing to say to starving people, and Robb tasted ash as he said it. But Sansa's words returned to him. "Don't let them think you are weak. Don't let them think you are cruel for no reason." He pointed at the flour cart. "Bread will be distributed by name," he shouted. "By district. Septons will oversee it. The gold cloaks will keep order. Any man caught stealing sacks or cutting them will hang. Any soldier caught taking extra will hang. Any lord's man caught stirring riots will hang." The crowd's roar shifted again, uncertain now. Hunger wanted chaos. Fear wanted rules. A Septon pushed forward, holding up a 7-pointed star, his voice trembling as he called for calm. Some listened, some spat, but the surge slowed by degrees, like a tide meeting stone. On the balcony, Peter Baelish's smile did not fade. If anything, it deepened, as if he enjoyed watching Robb learn how power rotted from the inside. Robb stared up at him. For a heartbeat, their eyes locked. Peter Baelish lifted his cane, tapped it once lightly against the balcony rail. An idle gesture, meaningless to anyone else. To Robb, it felt like a promise. When the captive's feet kicked in the air and then stilled, the crowd fell quiet in a way that was almost reverent. Death had a way of reminding the hungry that they were still mortal. Robb watched the riot ebb, not because the people suddenly loved him, but because fear had been GI. Then a shape again. As he turned away, Grey Wind's hackles rose, and Robb knew without looking that Peter Baelish was still watching from above, amused and unafraid, as if he had already placed a wager on how long the wolf would survive in the city. Stannis did not wait for hunger to do his work. Within days, His camp had become a black growth along the shore and the fields, tents clustered like carrion birds. Baratheon banners snapped in the wind, crowned stags glaring toward the city as if insulted by the very idea of delay. Men hauled timber, dragged ropes, assembled crude siege engines. The sound of hammer-on wood carried through the cold air like a drumbeat. Davos walked the camp's edge as twilight bled into night, his cloak pulled tight, his face drawn. He had seen sieges before. He had seen what happened when cities were squeezed slowly, how hunger turned into madness, how plague followed, how men ate things they swore they never would. He stopped near a fire where Melisandre stood, her red gown a bright wound against the dark. The flames lit her face from below, making her eyes gleam. "The wolf will not kneel," she said softly, as if continuing a thought Davos had not spoken aloud. Davos's mouth tightened. "He's a boy," he muttered. "A stubborn boy who took a city because he had to. He's not some demon." Melisandre's smile was faint. "All men are boys to the fire," she said. "The flames do not care for names." Davos looked past her toward the city walls in the distance. Wolf banners still flew. Torches flickered along the battlements. He could imagine Robb Stark up there, young and hard-eyed, holding the city like a man holding a knife by the blade. "You're pushing the king," Davos said quietly. Melisandre's gaze slid to him. "I push him toward what must be done," she said. "He is Azor Ahai reborn. He cannot be made soft by sentiment." Davos let out a short, bitter laugh. "Sentiment," he echoed. "Is that what you call wanting to save people from starving to death?" Melisandre's eyes did not blink. "Starvation is a mercy compared to what comes," she said. Davos shivered, not from the cold. He had learned long ago that priests spoke of horrors the way sailors spoke of storms, casually, as if inevitability made cruelty acceptable. He turned away from her and headed toward Stannis's command tent. Inside, Stannis stood over the map again, the same rough map, now marked with new lines, siege positions, supply routes, the points where his ships could block the river. His jaw was clenched so hard Davos could see the muscle working. "You are building siege engines," Davos said carefully. "Your Grace, if you begin a siege, the city will. It will surrender," Stannis cut in. "It will starve," Davos insisted, voice rising despite himself. "And if the wolves inside keep distributing bread, the small folk may turn on you instead of them, or on everyone. And then," Stannis's eyes snapped to him. "Do you think I fear the small folk?" he demanded. Davos swallowed. "I think a king who ignores them dies," he said. Stannis's mouth tightened. "A king who lets rebels carve his realm dies," he replied. "Robb Stark must kneel. The realm must see it. If I grant him his own kingdom, every lord with a grievance will raise a banner and declare himself king of his own hill." Davos stepped closer, keeping his voice low. "Then take his surrender without breaking the city," he said. "Let him go north with his sister. Take the lions and hang them. The realm will see your justice. You'll have the city and the story both." Stannis stared at him for a long moment, and Davos felt the weight of that stare like stones piled on his chest. "You think in bargains," Stannis said at last, contempt creeping in. "Because you were a smuggler." Davos held his ground. "I think in outcomes," he said, "because I've buried men who thought pride was a plan." Stannis's eyes narrowed. "He will not kneel," he said, as if stating a fact that angered him. "Then make him," Davos replied, and hated himself for the words even as he spoke them, because he knew what they implied. "Not with fire, not with famine. With terms that let him save face enough to obey." Stannis's jaw worked. For a heartbeat Davos thought he saw something like doubt flicker. Then Stannis turned away. "No," he said simply. "I will not." Davos's hands curled into fists. He wanted to shout. He wanted to grab Stannis by the shoulders and shake him until sense rattled loose. But Davos had learned the truth of kings. You could not shake them. You could only watch them march toward the cliff and hope they stopped before falling. He left the tent and stepped back into the cold night. Behind him, in the camp, torches burned. Siege engines creaked. Men sang harsh songs to keep their fear down. Melisandre's red silhouette moved among the fires like a flame given flesh. Ahead, King's Landing's walls loomed dark, wolf banners snapping stubbornly in the wind. Between the camp and the city lay a strip of ground that would soon become a killing field. The Riverlands drowned slowly. Rain fell in cold sheets, turning roads into rivers and fields into mud. Smoke still rose from burned villages, though now it mixed with mist and made the world look blurred, as if the gods were ashamed to see what men had done. Roose Bolton rode with his hood up, his horse stepping carefully. The banners behind him sagged heavy with water, their colors muted. Men marched in silence, because songs were harder to sing when your boots sucked at the earth like graves pulling you down. By the road stood a tree from which corpses hung. 3 men in tattered clothes, their feet swaying slightly in the wind. Someone had nailed a scrap of parchment to one man's chest. Traitor, it read, the letters crude. Roose Bolton's pale eyes flicked over it without expression. Hanging was common here now, practiced by lions and wolves alike. The only difference was which sigil watched from the saddle. In his gloved hand, Roose held a letter sealed with gold, the lion pressed into wax so deep it looked like a bite mark. Tywin Lannister's seal. He had not opened it at once. He had waited until night, until his tent was quiet, until even his own men were too exhausted to listen at canvas. Now he read it again as he rode, the rain speckling the parchment. Tywin Lannister's words were simple, sharp as a blade. Robb Stark was a boy playing at kingship. The North would burn. The Riverlands would bleed. Roose Bolton could be rewarded if he chose the right side before the wrong side drowned him. Titles were offered. Lands. A promise of the wardenship of the North under Lannister rule. A promise of safety for Roose's line. And beneath the offers, the unspoken threat. Refuse and Tywin would find a way to make refusal fatal. Roose Bolton's mouth did not change as he read. He folded the letter carefully, tucking it into his cloak as if hiding it from the rain rather than from men. Ahead, shapes emerged in the mist, riders. Frey riders, judging by the muddy blue-gray of their cloaks and the way they sat their horses with the casual arrogance of men who thought bridges made them important. Their leader raised a hand. "Lord Bolton," he called, voice carrying through damp air. "A message from the twins." Roose slowed his horse. "From Walder Frey," he said as statement, not question. The rider nodded, shifting. "Lord Walder asks after the war," he said. "He asks after the king. He says the city's taken and he wonders what the North means to do about it." Roose's eyes narrowed slightly, almost imperceptibly. Walder Frey did not ask out of care. He asked out of greed. He would lean whichever way the wind blew hardest, and he wanted to know where to put his weight. "The North means to win," Roose said softly. The rider laughed nervously. "Aye," he said, "but winning's a slippery thing. Lord Walder says perhaps the young wolf has bitten off more than he can chew. Perhaps men in the Riverlands might wish to consider their own." A faint ripple moved in the reeds by the road. Roose saw it without seeming to. Blackfish's scouts, no doubt, watching, listening, waiting to carry whispers back to Riverrun, back to Robb. Roose Bolton's face remained calm. "Tell Lord Walder," he said, "that I consider my own interests every day." The rider's grin widened. "Then you'll understand," he said, lowering his voice. "Tywin Lannister's men." Roose's hand shot out, fast, gripping the rider's wrist. The man yelped, startled. Roose leaned closer, his voice quiet enough that the rain almost swallowed it. "Do not speak Tywin Lannister's name on the road as if it is a song," he murmured. "There are ears everywhere in the Riverlands. Some belong to fish, some belong to wolves, and some belong to men who would like to keep their tongues." The rider swallowed, eyes wide. "My lord," he stammered. Roose released him. "Tell Walder Frey," Roose said louder now, for any unseen ears to catch, "that I remain loyal to my king. Tell him I bleed where I am told to bleed." The words were neat, correct. They cost Roose nothing. Men often mistook words for truth because it was easier than admitting the truth was usually hidden. The Frey rider bowed quickly, relief and frustration mingling. "Aye, my lord," he said, and turned his horse away, the mist swallowing him. Roose rode on. Behind him, the hanging bodies swayed gently, their boots dripping rain. Ahead, the road disappeared into gray. Roose Bolton's mind was quiet, as it always was when the world grew loud. He thought of Tywin Lannister's letter. He thought of Robb Stark in a city far away, surrounded by enemies, pulled between the North and the Crown. He thought of Winterfell, old stone, old power, and the possibility of it belonging to him under a different banner. He did not decide yet. Decisions were like wounds, best made when you knew exactly how deep they would go. But as he rode through the Riverlands' cold rain, Roose Bolton felt the war shifting its weight, and he knew a man who stayed still would be crushed. In the Reach, the grass was still green. War had not yet trampled it into mud. The fields still rolled soft beneath a mild sky. Orchards still stood heavy with fruit, and the air smelled of flowers instead of smoke. It was almost insulting. Tywin Lannister rode into the Tyrell camp as if he owned the road. His cloak was damp with travel, his armor plain but immaculate. Around him, Lannister men kept tight formation, disciplined enough not to gape at the wealth displayed in every banner and tent. Mace Tyrell received him in a pavilion so large it felt like a hall. Silk walls billowed gently. Candles burned in rows, their light warm. The Tyrell rose, gold on green, was everywhere, blooming on cloth and armor and tapestries. Mace Tyrell sat at the center on a cushioned chair, his hands heavy with rings, his smile broad and nervous. Behind him, Olenna Tyrell sat like a thorn disguised as an old woman, eyes sharp as pins. Margaery Tyrell stood to one side, serene, her beauty composed like armor of another sort. Knights in green and gold lined the pavilion, their faces polite and curious. Tywin did not bow deeply. He inclined his head enough to acknowledge rank. "Lord Tyrell," he said. "Lord Lannister," Mace Tyrell replied, voice booming as if volume could compensate for uncertainty. "Welcome, welcome. We have heard much." Olenna's mouth twitched. "The whole realm has heard much," she said lightly. "It's rather difficult not to, with kings sprouting like weeds." Tywin's eyes moved to her. "Lady Olenna," he acknowledged. She smiled as if tasting something sour. "I am flattered you remember me," she said. Tywin did not bother to pretend. "I remember everyone who matters," he said, and the words were not a compliment. They were a warning. A table had been set with a map. When Tywin approached it, Mace Tyrell leaned forward eagerly, as if hoping the map would explain the world to him. "It's madness," Mace said. "The wolves in the city, the lions trapped behind rivers, the stag at the gates, and my nephew, Renly, declaring himself." "Renly is irrelevant," Tywin said, and watched Mace blink in offended surprise. Margaery's eyes did not change, but Olenna's brows lifted. "Irrelevant?" she echoed, amused. "That is a brave word to use for a man with the Reach behind him." Tywin's finger touched the map where King's Landing was marked. A black seal had been pressed there to represent the wolf now in the city. "Robb Stark holds the capital," Tywin said. "Stannis Baratheon camps outside. If Stannis takes the city, he will execute my grandchildren and my daughter. He will execute any who oppose him. He will also make enemies of you." Mace frowned. "Stannis is stern," he said weakly. Olenna snorted. "Stern," she repeated. "That is one word for him." Tywin's gaze sharpened. "Stannis despises your house," he said. "He has never forgiven you for supporting his brother. He will not marry your daughter. He will not grant you favor. He will IP you of influence because he believes influence is corruption." Margaery's lips parted slightly, then closed, her composure unbroken. Olenna's eyes narrowed. "And what of the wolves?" she asked. "Do they adore us, then?" Tywin's mouth tightened. "Robb Stark will not hold the city," he said. "Not against both me and Stannis. He has neither ships nor coin enough to feed it through siege. He has hostages, yes. But hostages are only valuable while the men who want them believe there is still something to bargain for." Mace shifted, uncomfortable. "What do you propose?" he asked. Tywin looked at Marjorie then, not with lust, not with admiration, but with the appraisal of a man weighing a sword. "You want your daughter to be queen," he said. Mace Tyrell puffed up, as if offended by bluntness, but his eyes gleamed. "My daughter deserves. She will have it," Tywin said, cutting him off. "If you choose correctly, help me break the wolves. Help me keep Stannis from the throne. In return, you will have a queen." Olenna's smile was thin. "A queen married to which boy?" she asked. "The monster is in chains, if the rumors are true." Tywin's eyes did not flicker. "Joffrey lives," he said. "If he dies, Tommen lives. Crowns fit on different heads." Mace's breath hitched. "Tommen is young," he said. "Then he will be moldable," Tywin replied. Marjorie's gaze met Tywin's at last. In her eyes there was no fear, only understanding, sharp as Olenna's but wrapped in silk. "And how do you intend to break the wolves?" she asked softly. Tywin's finger traced the roads leading into King's Landing. "We cut supplies," he said. "We choke the city. We starve the smallfolk until they riot. We let Robb Stark choose between feeding them and defending his walls. We force him to bleed for every day he remains inside." Olenna's eyes glittered. "And if the city burns?" she asked. Tywin's voice was flat. "Then it burns," he said. "Better ashes than Stannis." Mace Tyrell swallowed, but ambition pushed him onward. "And Renly?" he asked. Tywin's gaze turned cold. "Renly is a boy with a pretty smile," he said. "If he will bend, use him. If he will not, break him. A crown is not won by indulging nephews." Olenna's laugh was soft, sharp. "You do make everything sound so simple," she said. Tywin looked at her, unblinking. "It is simple," he said. "It is merely not easy." Silence stretched. Outside the pavilion, the Reach's fields glowed green under a mild sky, ignorant of the blood being bargained over. At last Mace Tyrell nodded, eager as a man accepting a feast. "Very well," he said. "We will help, for the good of the realm." "For the good of your house," Olenna corrected under her breath. Tywin's mouth did not move. The agreement was sealed not with smiles but with mutual necessity. As Tywin turned to leave, Marjorie's voice followed him, calm and light. "Do wolves burn easily, Lord Tywin?" Tywin paused. He looked back at her. "All things burn," he said. "The question is what they take with them." Outside, the wind stirred the grass, and the Reach's roses swayed, bright and indifferent, while far away a city held by wolves began to feel the first tightening of a noose. Night made the siege look beautiful. From the battlements, Robb could see Stannis' campfires spread across the dark fields like a constellation fallen to earth. The flames flickered in uneven clusters, each one a knot of men sharpening steel, boiling thin stew, whispering prayers or curses into the wind. Beyond them, at the shoreline, the silhouettes of Stannis' ships sat on the black water like waiting beasts. A horn sounded low, harsh, carrying up to the walls and into Robb's bones. Baratheon's war horn. Not an attack yet, but a reminder. "I am here. I will not leave." Grey Wind stood beside Robb, his fur ruffling in the wind, ears pricked toward the distant sound. The direwolf's eyes glinted gold in torchlight, watching the world below with the calm patience of a predator who knew prey could not escape forever. Robb's hands rested on the cold stone. His shoulder still ached where the arrow had grazed him, a dull throb that reminded him he was not made of iron. He looked down at the city behind him. Rooftops pressed tight, lanterns flickering, smoke curling from chimneys. It was a living thing, restless, and it could turn on him as easily as it could turn on Stannis. Footsteps approached, cautious. Sansa appeared from the stairwell, wrapped in a cloak, hair pulled back. She moved quietly, as if afraid loudness might summon monsters. She came to stand a few paces behind Robb, not wanting to crowd him, but not wanting to be alone either. "They're going to attack," she whispered. Robb did not look away from the field of embers. "Soon," he said. Sansa's breath came shallow. "Can you stop it?" she asked. Robb's jaw tightened. "I can kill men on ladders," he said. "I can pour boiling oil. I can shoot arrows. I can hold walls until bodies pile up like cordwood. That's what stopping looks like." Sansa swallowed, her eyes shining. "That's not what I meant," she said. Robb finally turned his head. He saw fear in her face, yes, but also something else. An exhaustion deeper than fear, the exhaustion of someone who had watched men choose pride over mercy again and again. "No," Robb said softly. "I don't think I can stop it." Sansa flinched, as if struck by honesty. Robb forced himself to continue. "Stannis wants me to kneel," he said. "If I kneel, he makes an example of me. If I don't, he besieges the city until it breaks. Either way, he believes he wins." Sansa's voice was small. "What about giving him the city?" she asked. "Leaving." Robb's gaze slid to the battlements, to the guards, to the banners. "If I leave," he said, "Tywin's men will tell the realm I fled like a thief. Stannis will tell the realm he broke the wolf. And the city," he gestured vaguely behind him, "the city will tear itself apart in the change. People will die. They will say I caused it." Sansa's eyes tightened. "People die anyway," she whispered. Robb felt the truth of it like a stone. He looked back down at Stannis's fires and imagined ladders rising in the dark. Men. Swarming, screams on stone. The red keep burning, wildfire spilling green into streets full of starving children. A faint green glow pulsed near the base of the wall, subtle as a heartbeat. Robb's eyes narrowed. He followed the glow to a cellar hatch that had been pried open by engineers earlier that day. They had found jars, dozens of them, sealed, old, stinking of alchemy. Wildfire caches, left behind in the bones of the city like poison waiting for a careless spark. Robb's stomach tightened. "They left it everywhere," he murmured. Sansa's eyes widened. "What is that?" she whispered, though she already knew enough to fear it. "Wildfire," Robb said, and the word tasted like sickness. If the siege began, if torches flew, if stones shattered, if one jar broke, King's Landing could become a pyre that no king could rule because there would be nothing left to rule. Behind them, a northern guard approached, breath steaming. "My king," he said, voice strained. "A rider came in under truce. From the river road. He carries news." Robb's heart sank. "Speak." The guard swallowed. "The Iron Islands have taken more holds," he said. "They say ships raid the stony shore. They say Winterfell is threatened." Sansa's hand flew to her mouth, muffling a sound that might have been a sob. Robb felt the world narrow to a point. Winterfell, far away, vulnerable, while he stood on foreign stone arguing with stags and holding lions in cages. His lungs felt tight, as if the air itself resisted him. He stared out at Stannis' campfires again, and he understood with sudden clarity that the war was not a line you crossed and finished. It was a net that tightened no matter which way you turned. "Send for Blackfish," Robb said to the guard. His voice sounded calm, though inside him everything was scraping. "Send for Great John. Send for the captains. Now." The guard ran. Sansa's voice trembled. "Robb," she whispered, and when he looked at her, he saw the child she had been flicker through. Small, frightened, needing someone to tell her it would be all right. Robb could not give her that lie. He reached out and took her hand anyway, holding it hard enough to remind both of them they were still alive. Below, Stannis' horn sounded again, longer this time, and the campfires seemed to shift, men moving like ants preparing to swarm. Robb turned back to the city and the faint green glow of wildfire beneath his feet, and he realized the cruelest truth of all. He had taken King's Landing by force, but he might lose it to fire without a single enemy blade touching him. The night wind snapped the wolf banner above his head, And somewhere in the dark, the realm waited to see whether the wolf would burn or bite.